Hello indie game fan, it's that time of year again where we pay tribute to awesome indie games, where 2022 was a much better year as compared to 2021 in my opinion, but this channel has grown so much as well, so thank you all for the support. So let's begin with ANNO Mutationem, a gorgeous cyberpunk pixel art title where you're on a mission in this metropolis, having a nice mix of side-scrolling combat with exploration portions as you take on odd jobs to explore the city. Combat is a highlight, with a nice mix of light and heavy attacks, where you will notice one SCP-682 as well, being a beautiful title worth a play. In the wake of the success of Overcooked, many indie developers have tried their hand at making similar local multiplayer co-op titles with healthy doses of chaos. And while these have been successful to various extents, none of them have taken off like PlateUp has, where the magic ingredient is no, not love, but rather a roguelite structure to the game. I know, some of you are beginning to groan, but this does actually add something new to the genre in that while the minute-to-minute action still involves you scrambling around trying to get the food ready, in between the levels are where you can choose your upgrades, from new recipes to equipment such as conveyors or turbo ovens, where these do dramatically change up the flow of the game, which keeps it exciting and is best with some friends. If you love boomer shooters but with a modern twist, please do yourself a favor and pick up Nightmare Reaper, an all-action title that has you facing off against nightmarish creatures as you advance from one area to the next. Yes, it does have a roguelite structure and a little bit of a looter-shooter element, but again, as is the case with PlateUp, it really does add to the experience. It's more about learning the weapons and getting into the flow of combat, reacting to whatever the game throws at you, rather than memorizing level layouts, where you gain a currency in every run which can be used to unlock permanent upgrades, nailing that compelling gameplay loop.
Wake up, sleeper. Dreaming again?
Some of you were pissed when I left Citizen Sleeper off my list of 15 during the mid-year recap, so I'm here to acknowledge that this is one of the best narrative RPGs both of the year and in recent memory.
You turn up for your friends, or you don't.
It takes place in the ruins of interplanetary capitalism, where you play as an escaped worker trying to find a way to survive on a lawless space station at the edge of society.
Wake up, sleeper. Your body is dying.
The almost tabletop RPG-like mechanics of rolling dice and passing skill checks is neat, where you need to manage your energy and time every day, with compelling characters that really do suck you in. But the best part is that this is not done, with one more free chapter to come in 2023, but the base game is great and should not be missed.
Wake up, sleeper. You are hunted. Break their locks. Access their secrets. We are waiting.
The mad lads and ladies of Prima did it. They went up against Nintendo and the largest media franchise in Pokemon and somehow managed to get a slice of that pie with Temtem, all by simply listening to what the players wanted and delivering exactly that. This is a monster-taming MMORPG in a persistent world, giving players what Game Freak did not want to make, where based on the estimated sales figures, this has done very well for them, so much so that they scaled up to a team of 30 plus people and became an indie success story. Player housing, guilds, raids and more are present, where the 2v2 combat with a stamina system is different from Pokemon, where post-launch support seems to be going well and player numbers are holding up, so chalk 1 up on the scoreboard for the underdogs with this. There are a number of notable cozy games this year as well, one of which is the relatively underrated Wobbledogs, where I do not see enough people talking about this great game. It is a pet simulation title where you're taking care of a hive of these mutant creatures named Wobbledogs, which can breed and evolve with all sorts of weird characteristics, where, and I don't say this lightly, there are Viva Pinata vibes emanating from this game, where it is all relatively low stakes and chill and is very pleasant. I'm so very happy to give a nod to Gordian Quest as well, a gorgeous hand-drawn tactical deck-building RPG that comes to us from my home country of Singapore, where it does have roguelite elements as well, but do not be turned off because of that. In many ways, this is perhaps more similar to Darkest Dungeon, where there is a hefty campaign mode as well as the more run-based realm mode to choose from, so if you don't like the roguelite structure of gameplay, the campaign will be the one to check out. I love the sheer variety of characters here, where combat is a highlight as well since positioning does matter, and add to that the fun of min-maxing your deck like in Slay the Spire and you have a fantastic title. In the wake of the popularity of Dark Souls, many developers have tried to make their own Soulsborne games to varying degrees of success, where Thymesia is an example of a good one that most interestingly comes to us from a developer out of Taiwan. It does have a stereotypical amnesiac protagonist setup, where a hero needs to find out what happened to this plague-infested kingdom, where curiously, he has the power to shape and wield the plague as a weapon itself. The combat is weighty and does punish you for button mashing, although they didn't go quite as far with the stamina system, but the deliciously macabre, grimdark world and monstrous bosses are excellent, and might be something to check out if you love the genre.
Why do they need assassins in heaven? To do someone's dirty work.
A game which people absolutely adore, which I appreciate, is Neon White, a time trial first-person shooter that has you exterminating demons in heaven with a variety of weapons and their special abilities to help along the way. The main mode requires you to get through the level as quickly as you can, with the condition that you need to kill all demons in the level for it to count, where you're frantically getting weapons, aiming and firing them at enemies, and then burning a card to use its movement abilities to get the next weapon or platform and so on. We are ranked based on your time and thus have instant reset and retry. The core action is great, but the writing not so much, but it's a good game overall.
God's judgment has nothing to do with it.
Legends tell of a golden time in years past of great clashes, heroes, and triumphs.
Now, don't judge a book by its cover, and that while Symphony of War, the Nephilim Saga was more or less built in RPG Maker, the developers had to wrangle that program to make it do what they want, and have made custom sprites to make this an excellent strategy RPG. It is set in a world of conflict, of warring armies and even something more sinister lurking in the shadows, where you notice that this style of game is not that common these days. Rather than individual units or heroes like in Fire Emblem, you are instead commanding squads of units whose composition and formation is up to you, being like Ogre Battle, which is not drawn upon enough, making this one of the best tactics games of the year. I'm honestly impressed at how developer Drinkbox Studios does not miss, where they've made one great game after another, being best known for the Guacamelee series of Metroidvanias, but made an impact with a new IP in Nobody Saves the World. This is an action-adventure title where you play as a character named Nobody, who finds a magic wand that allows him to transform into other characters, gaining use of their abilities as you attempt to save the world. This is very Skinnerbox in design in that there are always meters to fill up, which just unlocks more stuff, but the overall presentation and minute-to-minute action is fantastic, so colour me impressed, and as a result, I cannot wait to see what's next from them, which, based on their cadence, might be another 3 to 4 years. One of the most wonderful time and resource management titles is Stacklands, one where you're placing cards on top of each other to cause interesting things to happen, such as placing a villager on a berry bush to gather berries, where you need to ensure that you have enough food to survive at the conclusion of every month. You have to get coins to buy booster packs, which might contain ideas which will advance technology, all while having to fend off enemies like bears, rats or skeletons, where it is at a low price and is value for money. I'm not usually a survival horror person since I like my pants clean, but of course I do have to give props to SIGNALIS, a title which I've had my eye on for the longest of time and nails exactly what they are going for. This is an old school survival horror title where you play as a replica, delving into an off-world government facility in search of answers, where the zombie-like enemies do sure remind me of Resident Evil 1. It has limited ammo, hard to kill enemies, key items, backtracking and even tank controls, but if you love this very classic genre, do yourself a favour and pick this up. Dropping a couple of spots since we last took a look is Infernax, a Castlevania style action platformer that is more in line with early Castlevania titles as compared to Symphony of the Night. You play as a knight, returning to your homeland only to find it overrun with evil and unholy magic, now making it your mission to cleanse the land. Most interestingly, this has choices to make which does affect the story. It comes to us from the legendary Berserk studio, who are game dev legends, where they also nailed the visuals here.
Rising sun forever dimmed, a land of moonlight and fading blossoms, eternal night, a vampire paradise. If you'll just take my hand.
Of course, I have to pay tribute at the altar of Vampire Survivors, probably the most successful title in terms of pure numbers of copies sold over the 11 months or so of early access, where people throw about the term genre-defining or willy-nilly, but it is true in this case, since the success of this has spawned a whole bunch of clones for better or worse. We are looking at the expansion DLC which just released, which added 8 new characters, 13 new weapons, a new stage, new music and more unlocks to make this even better. But if you're not familiar with the core game, it has you killing enemies and picking up XP and upgrades, selecting weapons and relics that do combine and evolve into more powerful versions that allow you to absolutely destroy hordes of oncoming monsters. It is the reverse of a bullet hell title, where you are the one spewing out all the attacks and projectiles, hence the term bullet heaven, and while it is compelling and fun and great, the quote-unquote gameplay has you moving around on an infinitely scrolling map, being one step above an idle game, so I'm not that comfortable ranking it among the top 10, but it is probably the game of 2022. The game with the unenviable task of following up from Vampire Survivors is Coromon, a pixel art monster taming RPG that I have to mention as a fan of the genre, since I grew up with Pokemon and this is indeed a nice throwback. I love the pixel art Coromon designs, especially those that more resemble animals rather than the elemental bosses, where, like Temtem, the developers are fans of the genre and have built in things like Nuzlocke mode, but I'm happy to see the success of this game. The relaxing city builder is also another trend, with games like Islanders and Townscaper leading the way, but the game that took the idea and ran with it is Dorfromantik, perhaps being the most successful game in the genre, and most impressively is from a team of 4 fresh graduates from a game development program in Berlin, where they knocked it out of the park on the first try, which makes me excited for their future. You are rotating and placing tiles down in order to maximize bonuses to get more points for more tiles, to the extent that you may build infinitely, but the game is over when you do run out and have to start over, but it's so low stakes with pleasant art and music, which makes this the perfect title to chill out to. I've been very impressed with Dome Keeper ever since I came to know of this, where a little known fact is that I spotted this way back in September 2021 when it was still known as Dorfromantik, which is why you should subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up with all things indie games. This is a defense roguelite, where you're building up your defenses and fending off waves of alien creatures to prevent them from destroying your dome, having to go underground to dig for resources in between. This has fun upgrades, different playable characters with more to come, and some interesting meta progression that is not that grindy, with a great pixel art look as well. I've been keeping an eye on Proteus through early access since it made a great first impression, where it has risen to the occasion and became an absolute must-play in the indie boomer shooter space. It has visceral action and does what all good retro games do, in that this tricks your brain into thinking back to how the original Doom made you feel, but if you actually compare the visuals, there is a vast chasm in between, with awesome feeling weapons and action, which is great as well. Libra Revision is a 2D side-scrolling action platformer RPG that is from a solo Japanese developer, developed over the course of 15 years or so, and is relatively underrated, where this has leveling, loot and skill progression, with multiple possible builds as you make your way through the world, destroying the monsters that stand in your way as you confront time and fate themselves. The monster designs are awesome, and this is very Japanese in design, from the overwhelming amount of activity on screen, from flashy animations and huge numbers popping off enemies, as well as giant screen-filling bosses. It is relatively underrated, all things considered, and is a style of game that is not that common these days, once again showcasing how awesome indie games can be. I still cannot believe that we're getting Heroes of Might and Magic likes again in 2022, where HOMM 3 is one of my favourite games of all time, where I love it that Heroes Hour managed to put its own spin on things. The hero-focused overworld exploration and resource gathering is there, but combat is turned into a real-time auto-battler with massive armies clashing, rather than the less impressive stacks of creatures in HOMM, where this is such a loving tribute that it has to be mentioned. Surprise! My original game of the year at the mid-year mark was Tunic, which of course has dropped a couple of spots, but it is still in the respectable top 5, where Zelda Like a Fox is still awesome and is not to be missed. Exploration in games is the most important factor, and Tunic does it very well, where you awaken on a mysterious landmass and are just set free to explore. It is rather cryptic and does not hold your hand at all, where the revelations down the line are equal parts amazing, but might also make you slap your forehead, where the sense of wonder and discovery makes this a truly special game. On paper, Cult of the Lamb is perhaps the most successful indie game of the year, selling a stupid amount of copies at a price significantly higher than Vampire Survivors, which means more revenue, where the Devolver marketing machine was in full force with this, and to be honest, is a great title which is very compelling. It also does something sneaky which I appreciate as well, since it is a management title first and an action roguelite second, where combat is just okay and is perhaps more about optimizing your compound and keeping your followers happy, but it is very good and earns a well-deserved number 3 spot. Alright, my biases are showing, but hey, it's my list, and as a fan of old school JRPGs, of course Chained Echoes has to be mentioned, perhaps the best indie JRPG to come along in recent memory. Putting the obvious gorgeous pixel art aside, which heavily skews my opinion, the other aspects of this game are excellent as well. The story has a typical setup where our protagonist is a young mercenary thrown into an increasingly dangerous war between kingdoms, but has a supporting cast of unique and well-written characters, each with their own motivations. The turn-based combat and overdrive system makes you use strategy in combat rather than spamming the same abilities, where the response time of everything is very snappy and is not drawn out. And then you have an excellent unconventional leveling system and the addition of mech units that of course evokes Xenogears, and you have a winner. And the best indie game of the year goes to... Rogue Legacy 2. Some of you may not know this, but I have some history with the original Rogue Legacy from 2013, where I didn't even play it at launch but picked it up in 2014, which is when everything changed. I remember spending hours and days late into the night plowing through that game, getting a newfound appreciation for indie games, which has led me down this path where the YouTube channel is today, where the sequel felt like catching up with an old friend who has since grown and changed as much as I have in the 8 years or so since then. I love the new character classes and progression systems, but the whole children succeeding you when you die portion has also hit home, since I've had a kid myself in the years since the first game, with a core gameplay loop that is excellent and compelling, so I am more than happy to bestow the award. You can watch these videos for a preview of 2023.